Hello, everyone, and welcome to How I Built This Resilience Edition. How is everybody doing? So in the screen next to me, I hope I'm pointing in the right direction. These screens are reversed, is Cathy Hughes. She's the founder of Urban One. It's the largest African-American owned broadcasting company in the United States with 55 radio stations all across the U.S., syndicates shows like Tom Joyner and Russ Parr and many others. We told Cathy's unbelievable, incredible, inspiring story on the podcast back in 2016. Cathy moved to Washington, D.C. in the early 70s to take a sales job at a radio station, eventually started her own station, but not before being turned down by 32 banks for a loan. In 1999, Cathy became the first African-American woman to head up a publicly traded company. It's an absolutely incredible story, one of my all-time favorite episodes, so please go back and check out that story on the podcast. Cathy, it's so great to see you.
Thank you, Guy. I can't tell you how good that makes me feel that my story was one of your favorites. Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to tell my story. Every place I went, I met someone. No matter where I was in this country, someone would say to me, I listened to How I Built This. So congratulations to you, because you have an incredible number of followers and listeners.
Well, you helped us launch the show. I think you were the second or third episode that we did. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, we are taking your questions for Cathy Hughes. So please submit them throughout this conversation. We'd love to get to some of your questions. First of all, Cathy, how are you doing? I mean, where do we begin? Pandemic, economic meltdown, mass demonstrations, about racial injustice. I mean, it's what a time, what a moment in our history.
And one of the things, it's given me regular, consistent, daily time to meditate and pray and really concentrate on what it's going to take for us to pull ourselves out of this. Because the frightening thing is that everyone globally, this isn't just an American problem or a Black community problem. This is a global problem. And it really doesn't make much sense to solve a problem if there's no one here to participate in the benefit of the solution to the problem. And then at the same time, I'm so encouraged by the demonstrations and the number of young people that I see that aren't going to accept things being the status quo any longer. This morning, we're all day today, we're doing a tribute to the mayor of the District of Columbia, because as you know, she painted 16th Street, which leads directly into the front door of the White House, Black Lives Matter, and changed the name to the Black Lives Matter Avenue. Right. But the issue is, particularly when we're talking about business, there is never again going to be a normal for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in general are in incredibly bad shape. I'm encouraged by the demonstration, but I'm also frightened by the reality, the economic reality of how do you effectuate change when the people you're effectuating it for are sick and dying and lacking the funds to implement the changes. The impact on America, I don't think the media, the White House, I don't think anyone's being totally true with us, giving us the truth in terms of how this is going to devastate. The majority of employment in the United States of America is based on small businesses, small entrepreneurs. They are being wiped out. They are being totally eliminated. They were already under fire trying to compete. Independent. I live in a neighborhood. I live on a farm. And in my neighborhood, there were 2 independent grocery stores. One has left in the 20 years that I've been here, sold out to a consolidated effort. Just one left. What happens when we don't have these independent entrepreneurial ventures to provide services, number one, and also to provide employment? And so while I'm encouraged, I'm also frightened.
You know, Cathy, it's really sobering to hear you talk about that, because you're probably one of the most optimistic people I've ever met in my life. I remember when you were on the show, I kept asking you about, all of the struggles that you went through, and I want to talk about some of them.
But nothing like this.
going to
Now I
32
realize,
banks, hearing no 32 times, being bankrupt for years, having creditors breathe down your neck, and still being positive, knowing that you were going to succeed. I remember you saying, I had no doubt that I
yes,
would succeed. I was worried, but I was never worried that I wouldn't make it.
yes.
And that was like, it was such a charge, when you said that in the show, because you really struggled for so many years to build this now an empire.
To have it
And
shut down, to have to furlough 382 broadcasters about 6 weeks ago.
wow,
When I look back at the challenges that I had, the struggles that I went through to build this company, they were almost like a picnic compared to what we're going through now. I worry. So far, all of our charitable ventures have been in terms of feeding the elderly and the children, so many of whom depended on their schools to provide them with nourishment. And when you are facing starvation, on the behalf of the masses, when you are faced with some people now not wanting to go back to work because they make more on unemployment than they do being gainfully employed. So my struggles were like good days compared to what I think we're getting ready to go through in this country.
yeah. And you mentioned Urban One's had furloughs. Media
Yeah.
organizations are in crisis. Even
Salary,
NPR.
my salary was cut by 30%. My
Yeah.
CEO salary, all of my personalities, everyone took a 20% pay cut, and so that we didn't have to have additional layoffs. But how do you keep up with your cost of living, your normal everyday functions? Certainly, no one thinks that in their fourth quarter they're going to be faced with an economic crisis, because you prepare if you're smart. And particularly entrepreneurs, they see being able to provide opportunity and stability and a future for the people who work for them. All of that is now gone.
Cathy, I'm curious. You started really what you built, which is this incredible media empire in 1980, 81. That was an economic recession, right? That was a downturn. And we've had a lot of entrepreneurs on the show who've talked about how when you start a business at a low point, there's really nowhere else except to
go up. My mother has a saying, you can't fall off the floor.
Right.
And so when you start, I think I shared this on how I built this.
Yeah.
I was 2.5 points over prime my first 18 months of being in business, and the prime was in the mid 20s. And my father being a CPA, I knew the term juice, which was the illegal loaning of money, at a high interest rate. And so I very naively didn't know I shouldn't have said to the bank that did finance me, isn't that called juice? You all are charging me 28% on $1 million. Anyone watching this, just do the math, 28%. And I'm a brand new company, no customers as of yet, no clients, no financial base. I'm having to live off this borrowed money, and this borrowed money, the cost of money to me during those early days was 28%. But again, it wasn't the same as it is now, because that was a personal problem. That was me trying to bring into reality, trying to actualize my vision, my dream. Now, so much of this is being determined by our circumstances, by our environment. And I had a control. I was able to refinance. I was able to do certain things once I learned the nature of the cost of money and how to, give my lenders comfort, and also navigate my way through developing a client base. All of that's out of control now. You see the effects of the COVID reports on television in terms of the infection, the deaths. There really needs to be a lot more information disseminated to the American public, in my opinion, about the cold hard facts of the economic impact of a global pandemic.
Cathy, and reminder to anyone watching, we're taking your questions for Cathy Hughes on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Cathy, during that time, I mean, you lived when you bought that first radio station with a 28% interest rate. You lived there. I mean, you literally lived on the
in a sleeping bag.
In a sleeping with your son, with your child, who's now the CEO of your company.
Right, who's in his third quarter of life. I'm in my fourth quarter. I don't want to be back in a sleeping bag. That's the part that's frightening for me, although I'm optimistic. And I don't want anyone that I care for. I don't want any of my employees. I don't want any of my clients in that same position. I have taken my reduced salary and tried to share with others. It's interesting because one morning in meditation, the Creator put upon my heart that I should look back at some of those really small businesses that were with me when I was a really small business. And so I've been trying to reach back and help them and just kind of sending them, some money every so often and referring people to them, trying to help them. We're also doing some free business advertising and promotion. We're trying to really, really, really not just look out for, are we going to survive, but how can we be the vehicle by which other small businesses can survive?
Cathy, I know that Urban One convened a town hall recently called, I think it was called We Are One. And just kind of shifting gears for a sec, I mean, we're in this incredible moment with mass demonstrations happening all over the United States, all over the world. And I'm sure you've seen polls that have shown significant majorities of the American public now, agree with the notion that racial injustice is a serious issue. And it seems to be different this time. These demonstrations seem to be different, seem to be really creating a much more profound national discussion about racial justice, about historical memory, and I wonder, I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think that this moment is different? I mean, I remember
it's totally
in Washington. Yeah.
Oh yes, no, it's totally different. It's so interesting. My most recent favorite poster, protest sign says that all of the president's friends are not racist, but those who are not did not think that racism would be a deal breaker. So what's happening with these protests? These young people, people around the world, people of all ethnicities, all demographics, they're saying it is a deal breaker. The reality is that history has to be sick and tired of repeating itself, because these are the same issues that sparked the riots of the 60s. Kent State, when those kids were gunned down at that university, it was a wake-up call when, for almost 9 minutes, all of the world could see a person murdered. The trauma on our young people, our children, because all of the networks, Facebook, Google, everybody just keeps playing it over and over and over and over and over again. I don't think that a 5, or 8, or 10-year-old, I don't want at my age to see somebody murdered at the hands of another human being, and then to have it's so long, it's so drawn out, almost 9 minutes. So you almost had to be in a coma if you had any level. Like I said, you may not have been a racist, but the issue of racism was not a deal breaker for you. It wasn't a deal breaker with the company that you worked for or owned. It wasn't a deal breaker for you in terms of the neighborhood or education. Now it is, and this murder is what triggered it. God has interesting ways of communicating with us, regardless of what our, belief is. Most of us agree that there is a creator, and that creator sometimes has very, very powerful ways of waking us up. It's not a smooth, wake up, little darling, I've got something to show you. It's like, bam, okay, wake up. And that's what's happened. So it is entirely different. the question is, where is the strategy? Who's going to be responsible for figuring out how do you fix it? This defund the a police department. I mean, the average woman who's been a victim of domestic violence does not want an unarmed individual social worker coming in to try to talk her husband down. That individual is going to get beat just like she did. Someone has to come in there armed to say, you got to stop. Okay, you can no longer brutalize this human being. So where are the answers? The other thing that really gives me optimism, though, is the fact that we are really sticking together better than I've ever seen. Always there's some disagreeable element in any type of movement or change. That's just human nature. But I'm seeing people being more supportive of each other across all types of lines. As I said, demographics and ethnicity, name something, they're coming together. Old, young, LGBT, people are kind of shying away from being judgmental. They're being a lot more appreciative of human nature. And I don't think that started, I think that started with COVID-19. COVID-19 is an equal opportunity killer. Does not care about anything other than taking you out of this life. And when you're faced with this whole issue of death, you start becoming sensitized, I think. And then with the protests behind it, we were already raw. We were already nervous and concerned about what was happening. We couldn't leave our homes. Still, a lot of the wiser ones still are not leaving their homes yet, waiting to see if these protests are going to, in fact, spike the infection rate. And so it is entirely different, Guy. And while I'm concerned about the economics of it, and that worries me, at the same time, I'm optimistic and happy that it's bringing us together. America is populated by the most brilliant minds on the planet. And so many of those most brilliant minds are people of color. And as always, we will rise to the occasion. We will do what is necessary, not just to save our own selves, but to save and preserve the country that we love and live in.
Yeah, I remember when you told the story about your life. You grew up in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yes.
One of the few African-American families in Omaha at the time, and you arrived to D.C. and I remember you describing it as this just magical experience for you because it was a black city. It was
it still is. What
still
Mayor
is.
Bowser just did. Stuff happens in Washington, D.C. that shakes the entire world. You like to always, America likes to claim that that's the White House and that's the government. No, that's the people. What she did, she painted that street herself. She was out there with that paint crew. Okay? I mean, wow. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it still happens to me in Washington. I couldn't have experienced that in Omaha, Nebraska. You couldn't have experienced that in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago. That's DC strong. I love it.
Well put.
I get excited when I think about it. That's my enthusiasm returning. Thank you. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm still fascinated.
Well, and during the 70s and during the 80s, you really kind of convened a lot of conversations through your stations in DC. You've got, I think, Urban One's got 5 or 6 stations in DC alone, in the DC area, and you've seen and experienced a lot of businesses like sort of pay lip service to diversity and inclusion. But I wonder whether, now there's this sort of this notion that silence is taking a position, that you can't be silent because that actually is a form of violence. And we're seeing corporations. I went on Amazon today and, Amazon's got a statement about racial injustice and it's all over the place. And I wonder, do you worry that it's just once again kind of, corporations paying lip service?
Absolutely. How dare the NFL commissioner talk about how they support diversity and they literally blackballed Colin Kaepernick. All right, until he gets a job, their apology is not legitimate in a lot of Black folks' mind, including mine. They're going, here, professional football is Black talent. All right, no question about that. And they were going to call them SOBs, that fire them. blackball Colin Kaepernick, and now they're holier than thou. Oh, we are so sorry. We were so wrong. That's not what should have been coming out of his freaking mouth. What he should have been saying was, I've got 10 teams all vying to offer Colin Kaepernick a contract. That's what's different, Guy, when you ask what's different. See, before we would have been, oh, well, they gave Jay-Z a contract to do the entertainment, which Jay-Z should not have taken, which is not going to be a popular opinion. Okay, but we should have stood strong behind Colin Kaepernick. But until he gets a job and he's one of the greatest quarterbacks alive today, still. Okay.
Right.
No question about that. And he's still sitting on the sideline, and you're going to act like you're so concerned. Plus, $250 million spent over a 10-year period is equivalent to the celebrations that they finance when they win the Super Bowl. That's no money for the NFL. Okay, again, you got to really follow the dollar when these corporations, it's almost as if those who do the worst in terms of diversity and opportunities of power within their corporation for people of color are the ones with the most sincere apologies.
Yeah.
Young people don't want to hear it, and a whole bunch of us older folks don't either.
Which is why it's important to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The dialogue. I was so proud the other night. Jane Fonda in her 80s called out white America. Okay, now she certainly does not have the relationship with white America that she once had when she was their #1 box office attraction. But still, she has a lot of power, a lot of influence. And I was so happy to hear her just hit it square on. So many are, but when these corporations every corporation in America, we start getting emails and communications from our staff saying, are you all going to issue a statement? Which my management team went ahead and did, because we are a publicly held corporation. The reality is I live my statement every day. I don't need to apologize for anything. No, I didn't please everyone and I couldn't help everyone, but I live it. I don't talk the talk. I try to walk the walk, and I require that of my company. So I'm a little suspect with all these major corporations. And, you look at their boards. How many Black members do they have on their boards? How many people of color, Black and brown, are in decision-making positions within those corporations? Now they're saying, oh, racism is so bad. Cool. Let's get past the apology stage. Let's send me some strategy. This is what I'm going to do. And like I said, $250 million spread over 10 years is the cost of the Super Bowl party if they win.
Right. So, the arguments that we're hearing is like actions speak louder than words, right? It's
absolutely
take action. Something you mentioned earlier in a conversation about entrepreneurship, and this is the thing, like How I Built This is about a celebration of entrepreneurship. But as you know, Cathy, entrepreneurship in the United States has actually been declining over the last 30 years.
Yes, and it's already because of consolidation, because of the big boxes, because of these major corporations buying out everybody and putting them all under one umbrella. It has been an incredible decline. But you know that we've lost almost 500,000 Black businesses between February and April. It's like 480,000 Black businesses have closed forever. Between 90 days we're talking about. That's, again, when we go back to your earlier question, that's why I'm afraid.
I wonder, it's sort of a weird question to ask, but I wonder whether, kind of going back to this idea of being at the sort of the low point in our economy. And when you sort of, given the conversations that we're having and the demonstrations that we're seeing around the country, do you think in some ways that this could also be a moment for young Black entrepreneurs or first-time Black entrepreneurs to really break through? Like if you were the Cathy Hughes of 1981,
always,
1980.
Always. Anytime. I lost you. Anytime.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Can you see me?
I can see you. Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, well, I lost you. Sorry about that. Anytime there's a crisis, there are opportunities because people become more creative. They become more ingenious. Necessity is the mother of invention is an old saying The reality is a lot of people are going to suffer during the next few years, I think, not just months, but a lot of people are going to have opportunities that would not have been available, who are going to come up with very creative, ingenious ideas and business ventures that are going to make a difference. And I'm excited for them. And so many of them are fearless, because when you're young and you realize that you have an opportunity to do something that you only thought before was a vision or a dream, but circumstances, the situation allowed you the opportunity to do that, the excitement, oh my goodness, it's almost, unheralded ever before, the opportunities that are going to come out of this in the medical field, in so many different fields, in technology. One of the problems, I think, with a significant decrease in Black businesses is so many of us are in businesses that are classified as non-essential. And I think that some of those new businesses of the future are going to be ultra essential.
Yeah. I know this is such a complex time, obviously, especially economically. But I don't know, Cathy, we spoke, you were on the show almost 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and your company, is as influential as ever in terms of its cultural impact and importance. If you think about 5 years from now, when you think about Urban One, you think about your influence, you think about the conversations you're convening, what do you want to have learned from this moment? Because of course you will survive this and hopefully thrive and grow if we can come out of this crisis.
Not if, when. Not if, when we come out.
When we come out.
Yeah.
What is it that you want to take away from this time, and really kind of apply to everything that you do?
Well, number one, I think that all of us are going to come out with different business models. I think that the whole issue of expensive office space, is going to be an issue. It took us, a minute to get our rhythm going. It took us a minute to really understand how do you supervise everyone in their homes while they're busy trying to help their child homeschool and make certain that they live up to the responsibility of that paycheck they're getting. But we are learning, and we are thriving, and we are moving forward. And thanks to technology, quite frankly. I can't imagine what it's going to be like. Remember when years ago there was a television show called The Jetsons, and he talked to his wristwatch. Well, early on, I don't know if you noticed, but my watch rang and I had to quickly, decline the call. I can't imagine how exciting it's going to be 25 years from now. We'll probably be able to, get up in the morning, get ready, and just kind of beam ourselves into whatever location we're supposed to be in. The opportunities, who would have thought that all these opportunities that have occurred in the last 15 to 20 years under the umbrella of technology would ever have existed. Yeah. So it's really kind of hard for me at this stage in my career and life to envision what it would be like 25 years from now. I would hope, my dream, my commitment would be that my company would be in a position to take that which we do now and multiply it 1 million times over to help that many more people. I've always felt that my company's mission had to be of service to my community. Being the first African-American woman of a publicly traded corporation, I know that my fiduciary responsibility is to say that the number one priority is supposed to be to enhance shareholder value. Again, what we're going through now, I don't have to say that, today. I said it almost, in memory of when I used to have to say that. And I don't feel guilty about admitting that my whole purpose for being in business was to be a voice and an assistant to my community. I wanted to provide assistance to the people who listen to me or who now watch me on one of our 2 cable channels or interact and are a user on our internet company. We touch on a weekly basis. 92% of all of Black America interacts with one branch of my company in one form or fashion. I want that to just continue to grow and multiply. And I want to, once again, use those resources to build my community. I think still, and I have had this opinion since a very, very young age, that it is my responsibility to cure the ills, to help figure out and strategize the path to liberation and freedom for my people. It is my responsibility as a Black entrepreneur to use my resources to help finance the correction of the ills that we have been plagued with. I cannot do that unless the system is willing to literally take its knee off my neck. Again, for people of color, witnessing that murder, it was like boing. It was like, there used to be another commercial on television. I'm big on commercials, as you know, since that's how I earn my living. It was Aqua Velva, and it was a slap. Okay. Watching that video was an Aqua Velva slap. It was a light bulb going off. We realized that we have to look out for ourselves, but we cannot do that when there are institutions whose prime purpose in being in life, the only reason the police department exists was those were the bounty hunters, those were the vigilantes during the days of slavery who went and got the slaves. Those were the overseers. They evolved into police departments, but that's where they started. They started patrolling and correcting the actions of Blacks that they did not feel was consistent with the best interests of white people. And those institutions still have that number one goal. And so that's not a problem. Only white people can solve the problem of institutional racism. The problem I can solve is providing for my people, providing an education, a skill to help them achieve their full potential, financing the things that they need and want and are desirous of, and not having to depend on anyone, including the federal government, to provide that for us. That's a Black responsibility to the Black community.
Cathy Hughes, it's just incredible. It's so great to see you. Thank you for coming back. You promise when we have the How I Built This Summit, when we can reconvene it, when it's safe.
I told you to get there a week early. I'm going to be there waiting on you all. I'm so sorry that I missed it. The past opportunity. But also, Guy, thank you so much for the incredible work you and NPR do in sharing easily digestible and palatable information about. It's not that complicated the way you present businesses to the general public. So often you go and see or hear a speech or watch someone and you leave there thinking, wow, I really don't understand what they said. Guy, you and your team have an incredible talent for taking very complicated issues and simplifying them so that it's put in a layman's language and everyone can understand. And I thank you and salute you for that.
Well, we're very fortunate to have guests like you who come on the show. So thank you, Cathy. And just want to thank a couple people watching. I won't get to everybody, but Bernardino Servin in Mexico, Stephen Backrack in Naples, Florida, Rick Lee Morales in Washington, D.C., Jado Bazimana in Kigali, Rwanda. Hello.
Wow.
A lot of people around the world, Cathy. In case you missed any of this conversation or want to see it again, it's going to be on our Facebook page, facebook.com/howibuiltthis. And you can also find all of these conversations from our Resilience series there or on our YouTube page, the NPR YouTube page. We'll also be putting out an excerpt of this conversation, my conversation with Cathy, on our podcast. So check out that. Look out for that. We have a brand new episode of How I Built This coming out on Monday. It is the story of Shake Shack. So check it out. Other than that, I will see you back here next Wednesday. Cathy, thank you again. And thanks everybody for joining us, and see you soon.
Thank you. God bless.